2022 was kind of a weird year for gaming, in my opinion. I personally did not really connect with a lot of the games that released this year, and I'm kind of here to talk about what was generally off about this year that made me not as engaged with the medium as I have been in the past couple of years. Generally, a lot of the games just from this year were really bland and lame. Like, I don't care about Elden Ring. I'm not much of a Souls fan, so like, probably the year's biggest game was immediately a turnoff for me. And then, like, the other, like, big games are, like, what, God of War Ragnarok? I'm personally just super exhausted with Sony's approach to games as of late, with them just focusing on narratives that are, while super impressive and, like, big budget and visually stellar, they generally, as games, don't really push the medium forward in any meaningful way. Like, yeah, they have some accessibility options that make the games, like, super easier for newer people to get into. As someone that's been into the gaming, like, landscape for years of my life, I don't find much personal value within these features. In fact, it feels like there's been a compromise in terms of trying to balance people new to gaming and people who are very familiar with the medium as a whole. Like, I get trying to make it so people don't get stuck in the video game that you paid like $70 for, but holy Christ, I don't need a character breathing down my neck telling me the answers to absolutely any problem because the game wants me to feel a lot more included in like its story and the overall experience. I guess when you boil it down, I feel like my biggest problem with 2022 in gaming was I felt like the medium wasn't pushed as hard as it could have been. Like last year's Game of the Year in terms of like the big award announcements that people were like paying attention to was a game that had a very experimental edge with its weird focus on co-op multiplayer. It wasn't a game I particularly cared for as much as others did, but I very much respected the fact that I was actually trying to push the like mainstream audience a bit more into like newer kinds of games. It feels like the mainstream gaming audience and companies as a whole are settling for less and just kind of staying content with where they are now, rather than trying to push the medium forward in interesting ways. Like, probably my favorite game of 2020 was the game Half-Life Alyx. Despite there still being a lot of jank with VR, I do respect the fact that Valve was trying to push VR as a medium forward and try to bring it more to the mainstream audience's eyes, which I think it's mainly succeeded on, with the past couple of years having a lot more VR focus in the mainstream eyes as of late, with games like Resident Evil Village and the 4 remake getting VR compatibility coming. That isn't to say that there hasn't been experimentation this year in terms of trying to push the medium forward in mainstream eyes. Elden Ring, despite my problems with the Souls-like genre, very much tried to push its series forward with the open world design philosophy that has kind of been the mainstream thing for the past couple of years. It wasn't that crazy of a risk in my opinion, but the fact that FromSoft pushed themselves forward just a little bit for the sake of trying something new out, I can at least commend that a little bit. I want to commend a couple of games this year for trying to push the medium and generally their series forward in interesting ways that you should probably check out. Kirby and the Forgotten Land is probably the biggest example of a new game transitioning to a new perspective, and while it is a bit redundant in terms of fusing elements of like Mario Odyssey and Mario 3D Land, I feel like Kirby was able to find a new identity here that hopefully they can expand on with future releases. Despite everyone's problems with the release of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, I do feel like Pokemon as a series this year really pushed itself to become something new and unique, and while it didn't completely succeed in sticking the landing, I do have to commend a lot of the innovations that were brought to Pokemon this year, with probably my favorite changes coming from Legends Arceus' catching mechanics and the different ways that Pokemon tried to do the open world approach this year. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 absolutely pushed the hardware this year, with the game sticking the landing on innovating the gameplay and crafting a narrative that's going to stick with me for years to come. It's probably one of the best stories that gaming has had to offer in the past like decade, and I'm really excited to see where Monolith Soft goes next in terms of pushing the Switch and Nintendo in terms of their hardware forward. They're easily one of the most interesting and helpful companies to Nintendo in terms of actually making their games work on that really weak piece of hardware, and hopefully they continue to push the hardware even further so we can have even better experiences on Nintendo platforms. A game that you might have missed this year that I didn't see much discussion about was the desolate, experimental, beautiful, and high-budget game Ghostwire Tokyo. This game, without really spoiling the experience as a whole, is a game where you kind of go through this world that feels like it's been raptured, and you basically go around trying to collect these spears and fighting off these demons in an interesting and really just fantastically presented game. It's a game that we don't really get too much of, and I would really like to see people put more attention on, because I feel like a lot of people overlooked it. Overall, 2022, despite a lot of the lack of innovation within the mainstream gaming landscape, felt like a year full of quality, comfortable, not so challenging games, with it feeling like the gaming landscape is gearing up for something big in 2023. I'm really excited for the games coming out this year, and I'm hoping that next year when I do a video like this, we're going to be talking about the crazy innovations that gaming and a lot of these different series went through this year, because I think it's going to be an insane year for the gaming landscape. But what do you think? Were you disappointed by the games that released this year, or were you pushing for something a little more from the gaming landscape as a whole? Let me know down below, and if you have any game recommendations, send them my way. I'll absolutely check out a lot of the games down there. But until then, thank you guys for hopping on by. This has been Sleep, and really, thank you guys for watching this video. I really appreciate that you care about my thoughts about games from the last, year. I absolutely see 2023 being an absolutely big year for me, and so I'm just super excited to go into high gear on content creation. Get ready for an action-packed year on this channel, and leave a sub if, you're interested to see how everything's gonna turn out. I'm so excited. But until then, this has been Sleep. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope to see you guys next time. See ya!